Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 647. I had white pieces and kicked off with c4. My opponent went with c5, the symmetrical variation to the English. I go with g3. You can see we're not playing the most popular moves, but we're still well within known territory. A little more common to develop the c knight first, knight to c6, but he goes with knight f6. Also okay, and I go knight c3. He goes knight c6, and now if I played knight f3, this would be a pretty well-known position in the four knights variation of the English. If I'm going with bishop g2, I have a different setup in mind, and if possible, I'll go for the Botvinnik setup with pawns on e4 and d3. So I'm not committing this knight to the f3 square just yet. It might come out to e2, which would be consistent with the Botvinnik setup. Anyway, he goes e6 here, very reasonable response, and now I go e4, going for my setup, and he goes knight d4 here, and we're out of the opening book. An interesting try if you have black in this kind of situation and you want to try and break up this clamp that white is trying to develop, is you can actually play d5 here. It's a pawn sack. Let's see, e takes, c takes, and then this knight has to move knight to b4. Yeah, maybe you can round up this pawn. Actually, it's got three pieces defending it. Let's see, white has to play d3 here to keep the knight from hopping into the d3 square. So maybe you get the pawn back, and then white's pawns are a little bit disordered, and and the development is about equal. Both sides have two pieces developed and are still a couple of moves away from castling. So, and it's more of an open position. So if you want to kind of bust up your opponent's plans with his English opening, which is usually they're going for some kind of closed setup, that's a nice way to do it, that d5 move. Anyway, in this position, he went knight d4. Another reasonable response, just occupying that good central square. That's the hole in the Botvinnik setup that I've created there. Let's say I go knight ge2. I want to be prepared to trade that off at the right time. And now he goes e5, just cementing that knight there and being ready to recapture with one pawn or the other. So this is a fine position, even though white has black has wasted a move going from e6, e7 to e6, and then e6 to e5. White's setup is also kind of slow, so nothing really horrible has happened here, and white only has a slight opening edge. So get to a point where let's see, I played d6 here. I'll show you where I start to get more of an advantage. He played d6 here, and I went with d3. Yeah, I need to find a way to develop my dark squared bishop. Comes in with bishop g4. I kick it back with f3, and he goes bishop to e6. That actually is another kind of wasted move. The engine is recommending bishop d7, and you'll see if we roll the game forward that the bishop will end up on the d7 square anyway. The problem with this location is that I'm going to put my knight here, and then he's either going to have to trade it with his trade his bishop against the knight, which he probably doesn't want to do. That's a nice bishop, or take it with the knight, in which case he's going to have to move the bishop again. So the bishop might as well have just gone to d7 in one move. Let's see. I took his knight first. He takes back, and then I place my knight on d5. He develops the bishop. And I'm not in a hurry to trade off his dark squared bishop. That can be an idea sometimes, particularly if you can get an attack going against the d-pawn, but not here. I don't think there's any use. This knight is a better piece than that bishop, so just going to leave it there and expand on the queen side. I played b4 here. Now, the chess engine was recommending actually to expand on the king side with f4, which is another idea with the Botvinnik setup. You can expand on either side, and it is true, black hasn't castled yet, and his pieces look a bit cramped, so f4 is an interesting idea here. Anyway, I went on with b4. He castled. And a4, just expanding on the queen side. He goes rook to c8. And I went bishop to a3. It's not clear if that's the best square for the bishop, but anyway, it's sort of consistent with my queenside expansion plan. I'm going to play rook to c1, but there's a problem with this plan. Well, I'll show it to you in a little bit. Let's see, knight takes d5 happens now. I take back, and you see this bishop that went to e6 has been forced to move again, and it ended up on d7 anyway. Oh, cancel that. Let's see. Oh, I took with the e pawn. That's right. I wanted to keep this mass of pawns on the queen side, and Also, this opens up potentially a line of attack along the e file, and I can push the f pawn forward. So still with some ideas of undermining the center here. So, so I think that's a fine way to play. He moved the bishop back, and then I go rook c1. So the problem with rook c1 is the rook is actually not stable on that square. He could have played bishop to g5 here. Sorry, the dark squared bishop, bishop to g5, kicking that rook away from that square, and it can't really go anywhere and stay on the c file. If it goes to c2, for example, that leaves the a pawn hanging with a pin. So that would be annoying, or a skewer. Anyway, yeah, I guess that's a pin. Let's see, rook c1. So he could have chased the rook away with bishop g5, and I would just have to move the rook here, and then his bishop could have penetrated with bishop to e3. So that would have been black's chance to really come out of the opening with some kind of advantage. Let's see, he went b6 here, slowing down my queenside pawns, and I push with a5, which is an outright mistake. So rook c1 is like a little inaccuracy, but a5 is a mistake. This just loses a pawn, and he really should have taken it. takes, and queen takes. And, you know, maybe I have some compensation. This is kind of a weak pawn over here. Maybe I can round it up, and I have ideas of undermining the center still. But, yeah, black's just a little bit better in this position. So let's go back to, instead of a5, I could have played with b5. And the idea here would maybe to put the bishop on b4 and push this pawn forward. Have to be careful once again. I can't play a move like queen to d2 to support the pawn push, because he's got his bishop coming here with a skewer this time. So got to be careful in this position. There's some open lines to be wary of. Okay, he went with b6. I went with a5. And then he went with queen c7, so he didn't take advantage of my mistake. And I go queen d2. Now it's safe to play queen d2 because he's taken his queen off of this diagonal, so he can't put his bishop on g5. He brought his queen over to b7. And I played a takes b6, opening up a line here on the queen side. And I want to get in c5 here under the right circumstances. But I'm not sure if I can play it just yet. Anyway, I kind of switched my attention to the center with rook f to e1. He goes rook to a8, hitting my bishop. Rook a1, defending it. And then queen to c8. And this is really the beginning of the plan. And this is the point at which black goes downhill. So a very simple move here to just keep an even position for black would be to play f6. That's one suggestion from the engine. And that just kind of holds on to the center, which you'll see kind of falls apart in a few moves. Another idea here is, which is it's kind of an interesting line of play. It's actually a exchange sacrifice, but maybe an idea here for black players to keep in mind. Throwing the b pawn forward and encouraging me to place push my c pawn forward. Now the queen can take here, and the reason why this is an exchange sack is that puts the queen in the line with the bishop and the rook. So I can push the f pawn forward here, but the queen can come in. Yeah, it probably took a chess engine to find this kind of move. The idea that the queen could escape that skewer, escape being trapped by coming into b3. Pretty unusual idea. But anyway, this trade. So white wins the exchange, and then the white's bishop is hanging. Now there's some moves that can be played before saving the bishop. You can take some pawns with threats, so hitting the bishop, take this pawn, hitting the bishop, bishop drops back, rook here, chasing the queen away, finally saving the bishop, and the queen drops back. And yeah, there's a position where white, well, the pawns are even. White is up the exchange because it's 2 rooks and a bishop versus a rook and 2 bishops. But, well, white's pawns are a little bit scattered. His king is exposed. And those bishops can be powerful. And this bishop is stuck behind a pawn, so it's not looking very impressive at the moment. So that would have been an interesting way to play. But probably not realistic to find a line like that, especially in a blitz game. Anyway, my opponent had a different plan in mind. He lined up his queen and his bishop. So he went queen c3. And then I pushed forward with f4 as following through with my plan of undermining the center. I kind of reached a standstill over here on the queen side and switched over to the center. And he went with bishop h3. So that was part of his plan with queen c8, and was to support this bishop move. And this actually just loses a pawn, so I can grab a center pawn now. And this is where black's game really turns around. I think I keep an edge for the rest of the way, although it took me a long time to finish off the game, but that was kind of the turning point in the game. Let's see, he brought his queen out, so he's getting some activity over here in exchange for the center pawn. I could have grabbed a pawn right away, but I brought my rook up to chase his queen back, and then I took on d6, took back, and I played bishop b2, defending my rook against his rook, and then also eyeing the d pawn here. Let's see, he exchanged out and played queen to f6. Yeah, queen to f6 doesn't work, but it's actually hard to find a move here. f5 doesn't help too much, although that was the top engine choice. And it sets a little trap. If I take the pawn here, he can get some material back with that skewer. So you still have to be alert, but rook to e6 actually wins a piece. So that's how desperate the computer is at this point. It's actually giving up a whole piece and going for activity here with pushing the f-pawn forward and trying to open up my king side here. But white is still winning. Anyway, that's the situation black is in. But queen f6 doesn't help because it doesn't really defend the pawn, and when I take it, gives me another tempo because the queen has to move again. Comes forward to f5. And I went queen to e2. I didn't really need to defend my rook right at this point. I was planning on setting up this battery, but a better move here would have just been to continue taking pawns, because this pawn, it's his only pawn left on the queen side, and then my pawns roll forward unimpeded, so that would be the best play there. Just grab that last pawn on the queen side and then push these pawns home. Okay, I played queen e2. He went queen back to d7, so he's going to try and set up some kind of defense here. But my pawns just are too strong. They come rolling forward and kick his pieces around. I keep pushing. Drops the bishop back, and I brought my queen onto g4, thinking it'd be easier to win the endgame with the extra pawn. But actually, it gets a little bit tricky at a certain point. Also, right here. Yeah, after queen g4, it is actually, yeah, I don't know if I would have found my way out of this. He had a fork here. I could have played f5 and forked my pieces. Now, there is a way out. It involves taking the g-pawn and giving up the bishop. So he actually wins some material back, but it turns out my advanced pawns over here on the queen side are so strong I'm winning. Anyway, let's see. The quickest, or the best play for white is to first throw in the c6 move, chasing his queen. And then coming in here with the check. The queen had to stay in touch with g7 because of the mate threat. So the queen had to stay, couldn't take the pawn, so I had to stay on this 7th rank. But now this forces a trade and wins the bishop. But then, rook to a4, I start activating my rook and pushing these pawns forward, and I still have a winning position. But anyway, that would have been a more stubborn fight. And shows that just going for the trades is not, you still have to be wary of your opponent's counterplay. Anyway, he acquiesced and went for the trade. And let's see, he played f6, so blunting my bishop and protecting g7 for a bit. Let's see, I push on with c6. He goes rook to f7. He's also got to keep defending the f-pawn here. If the rook moves away, the bishop can take the f-pawn. So I push on with c7, which wins a bishop, but that kind of extends the game a little bit. The quickest win here is actually rook to e4. Interesting way to come in here and threaten to trade off his rook, which would eliminate, one of his best defenders. If he plays king f8, then this move bishop to c5 is winning because of the threat of pushing the pawn with a discovered check and then the rook coming in. So that would be a quick way, the quickest way. Anyway, I pushed on with c7. This does win the bishop. But he gets a couple pawns for it. And now, let's see, he takes here. Now the pawns are even, and I just have an extra piece, the bishop. And the number of pawns is getting fewer and fewer. So I have to be a little bit careful because if it's just rook and bishop versus rook, that's actually a draw. So if black can succeed in trading off all the pawns, he'll be okay. Let's fast forward through the next moves. It's not a whole lot going on. It's just kind of maneuvering and trying to push my pawns forward without trading them off. Right here, let's see, I went with rook c5 check. There was a better move here. I could have played king to f3 to keep his king out. And just, I've just got to try and slowly walk my pawns forward, maybe kick his king back with g4 here. Let's see, I played rook c5 check, and he obliged me by moving his king back, but actually he could have come forward to e4, and this would be a little bit awkward. I have to bring my rook back to protect the second rank now, and it'll take me a while to get organized and try and get these pieces going in the right direction, get these pawns going forward again. So that would have been the best way for black to fight, although I think I probably would still win. But I haven't played this accurately and haven't made my life easy here. Anyway, I played rook c5 check, and he moved his king back. And so now I can push forward. So we get one more trade. I'm reluctant to push these pawns forward and provoke trades, but I think I needed to do that to make progress. And now my king can come forward. And he comes around here to hopefully stop my pawn. Let's see, I push it forward. Let's go forward some moves. Just marching forward as best I can. And let's see, he went rook. Oh, I went rook to c6 here. Yeah, I could have gone for the check. I think this just wins the pawn anyway. So I don't know if this is a whole lot better. Rook c7 check, king here, and rook c6 check. This is an engine line. King back to e7, and then grabbing the pawn. But I win that pawn anyway. Let's take a look at the game. I don't think he can defend it. That's the advantage of having the extra piece, and that's how you should use it, is try and gang up on his loose pieces. I guess here, in this case, what's different is that here he had the option of pushing it forward. It loses the pawn, but then when I take with my pawn, and because my king is tied up defending the bishop, I have to take with a pawn, and then he can maybe get some counterplay with his g-pawn. But he played king d7 here, and I grabbed the pawn with the rook. So we get to the same kind of position. And yeah, this is just winning for white. I don't think there was anything else going on. No great defenses that black had. He just played out the rest of the moves. And, I kept his king isolated here. And I am actually threatening checkmate here. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was a mistake there. His king still has a move to, and I can't play my rook to the back rank just yet. But I'm going to checkmate him when I push the pawn forward, I guess. So anyway, at this point, he sacrifices his rook and takes my rook, but the two pawns are enough to win. And eventually, well, we played it all the way out to checkmate. So I rounded up his king and didn't go for any stalemate tricks, which is the main thing you have to watch out for. So anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon.